Hi, everybody. All right, so we've had some requests for training on keeping meetings to the set amount of time. So I think we're all in that point in the year where not only is business maybe getting a little hectic year end, if you work on a fiscal calendar year, things are coming to an end, but it's the holidays and everything's just a little bit different than we're all accustomed to. The weather's starting to shift where we are at. As you can tell, I'm in warm mode because I had to be out today where I would much rather be in my office. And there comes a point where if we don't run our meetings efficiently, both our internal and our external meetings efficiently, we can come across in a very disrespectful manner to those that are in attendance to our meetings. So I thought I would jump on and give everybody some tips on running both your internal and external meetings within the time limit that you ask for. And while this seems like it may be very simple to adjust, a lot of people struggle with it. And everybody kind of has a tendency to walk out of a meeting and go, why were we there? Or, I think everybody's seen the coffee mug that says that was another meeting that could have been an email. So we're gonna talk just about a couple of things here, and hopefully you can maybe implement a couple of these items. If you need help with any of these, please feel free to reach out. And these are great introductions to our conflict resolution training, where we train your team to conflict for positive results in meetings, and our executive management training. So the first question is, why can't you get through your meeting? If we set our meeting for an hour or an hour and a half, why are you leaving in 2 hours, 2.5 hours? And what is the temperature of your attendees when your meeting ends that late? And why is this important? So the first thing I'm gonna suggest is to set an agenda. And like I said, a lot of these sound very fundamental, but when I was running a sales territory, and even now when you interact with us, 9 times out of 10, you should receive an agenda for not only our video calls, but our internal meetings as well. And that agenda can be very simple. It can be maybe even a little bit more in depth, but our hope when we send those now, and when I did it in my sales career, was to give you a tone for the meeting. A lot of times I'm gonna bring up something that maybe you are unaware of. So in a sales capacity, it's my first ability to drop a pebble in the water and kind of cause that ripple and give you something to think about. The second piece is that I want people to give me a heads up if they are going to add something to the agenda. If you're talking to a customer, maybe they have some billing concerns, or they know they have some new business that they need to bring to the table, and they want to talk about those opportunities, or they have a big expansion coming, or they have a big reduction in services and they have some concerns that they'd like to discuss with you. That way you're prepared and you have the correct documentation or the right mindset, probably more important than anything, and you don't get caught off guard in a meeting. So sending that agenda has a lot of different advantages in a sales capacity. In an internal capacity, no matter what the meeting is, when you have the ability to send out an agenda, people have the ability to come prepared. If you want to talk about 4 or 5 things, depending on the advancedness of those topics, that's a lot to cover in, let's say, a 1-hour meeting. So you need people to come prepared. You don't want them distracted, digging things up on their laptop, or you don't have to table too many things till the next meeting. You've gathered the intelligence that you have hired, kind of that human inventory. You've gathered them together. So this is the first step to taking advantage of all of that intelligence and all of that wiseness all in one room. So don't not give them a chance to come prepared. So when you put that agenda out, make sure that in the last line, if not in the first and last line, you are very clear. Please let me know if you have any additions or amendments. I even change fonts, but I'm a font person, so I'm just kind of that girl. The next thing is to set more time than you actually think you need. Now, I'm going to liken this to asking a customer for a budget. A lot of times, and if you work with Oxygen coaches now, we encourage you to ask for a budget that is bigger than you know you will need. So if you think your product is going to cost your client or your prospect $100, it is my suggestion that you make sure that that budget is at least $150. You come in looking like the good guy at $100, and they think that you're less expensive than they were prepared for. Same thing with the meeting times. I would always leave a meeting feeling so pumped up. If you told me I had to be there for an hour and a half and I got to leave at an hour, I thought I was winning for the day. And it gives you some flexibility. It gives you the ability to be the good guy, and it also allows you time for questions and concerns. It allows you some breathing space if something does run over. But trying to cut it close and be the good guy and keep your meeting to an hour only will frustrate people in the end if you can't truly keep your content there. So liken it to your budget step. And if you struggle with your budget step, that's a whole different thing, but we can talk about that too. So ask for more time than what you need. Allow people to set their calendar knowing they're going to need an hour and a half or 2 hours or half a day with you, and then feel free to let people out early or feel free to end your meeting early so that people have maybe won back some time in their day. Time is corporations' biggest enemy, both internally and externally. So I think that we all feel a minor victory when we've won some time back. The next one is to stay on task. And depending on the number of people in your meeting, this can get very, very hard. I always like to pick the personality in the meeting that is kind of the judge of the group, and allow them to be the person that says, hey, we've come off task. Or you can just tell the whole room, if you feel like we've gotten too far off task, feel free to say, raise your hand and say, hey, we're too far off task, let's bring us back. And you can make that one of your focuses maybe for the new year in getting your meetings to become more efficient. So you're gonna stay on task. Obviously, the conversations start to shift, and a lot of very important topics can come up as they start to shift. The best way, in my opinion, to handle that is to decide in that moment if it can become a new item on your agenda, or if everyone is not prepared to have that conversation in that moment, when can it be handled? Can it be added to the next agenda, to the next meeting? Can it become an email string in follow-up, and who's going to take charge? The last thing you want to do is to have 5 or 6 things you still have to cover and have that one side item come out of nowhere and take over all that time. And really, there were still super important things to cover. Another really great tip that I encourage teams to use is to look at the agenda and decide what items on the agenda are best delegated to someone else in the room. I think that when we empower others to participate in the meeting, the focus stays a little bit better. They may bring up points that maybe we don't because we're trying to cover so much, and it can become a little bit more concise. We can add our thoughts. We are encouraging leadership from behind, which is a fantastic ability that a lot of leaders struggle to bring their team into, and to teach people to lead from behind. And you will gain a perspective from inside your team that maybe you are missing. So if there is something on your agenda that you can ask someone else to cover, again, you're buying yourself some time, you're empowering others, and it will give you a glance into the perspective of your team. It will help your agenda move a little bit quicker too, because we become long-winded and they have a brevity to move things along that we don't have when it's our meeting. Some of the items on your agenda can also be better served in a one-on-one or in a smaller group meeting. these are really tough to decide because as managers or owners, we have a tendency to want to get multiple birds with one stone. That does not necessarily mean that they are best served in a big setting. Sometimes it is best to handle them on one-on-ones or in just smaller functional groups so that we get the response that we're looking for. And in a big forum, unless we are actually fantastic facilitators, and you gotta internally check yourself here, you can facilitate the conflict and you can allow that to kind of fester, and you have the time. Again, that's training you can take with us where we will teach you to facilitate the conflict. You probably have at least 1 or 2 items on your agenda that are better served as a one-on-one conversation or a 1 to 2, 1 to 3 functional group conversation. So take a look at your agenda after you finally get it through. Decide if there's anything that can be delegated and what would be better served as a one-on-one conversation or a conference call. When we don't stick to our time frames, both an internal meeting with our direct reports or an outside sales meeting, whether we're speaking to a large group in a consultative approach, anything. If we are not respectful of the time in a meeting, then the message that is conveyed, we've all been in these situations, so put yourself back in one of those and think, man, how was I feeling when that happened? It shows a lack of respect that the speaker, the facilitator, has for the attendees. And I liken this to a show I watched one time, and they took a snapshot of a woman who was constantly on her cell phone. And she used to put her finger up and go, just one more minute, just one more minute. And the person that was facilitating this kind of awareness training said, when you see somebody go, just one more minute, if you freeze frame that, what you should be thinking is, I'm number one and your time doesn't matter. So for every time you go beyond a meeting end and you have just one more thing, I kind of want you to trigger your brain to think, I'm telling my customer, my prospect, or my employees that I'm number one and they're not important if I let this meeting go any further. It's a really hard, humbling reality check when we think about it that way, but we want to be respectful of other people's time just like we want people to be respectful of our time. And there's ways to fix this, so it's not like it's something that we just have to grin and bear it. That's completely not the case. If you do find yourself in one of those situations that's a kind of a grin and bear it moment, or the meeting really does need to proceed, I will tell you that to come butt up against a hard stop, the best thing to do is just acknowledge, hey, you know what? We gave ourselves an hour and a half. We're now at about an hour and 25 minutes. We obviously have more than a 5-minute conversation left. Would it be okay with the room if we went beyond the hard stop time? Now, you may get all kinds of different answers. It may be, hey, you know what? This conversation is important. We're going to go ahead and keep going, and people just need to step outside and reschedule their next appointment. The answer may be, no, I'm sorry. My kid has a doctor's appointment and I gotta go. Or we need to cancel, we need to stop here, but we can pick this up in 45 minutes, or we can pick this up tomorrow at the same time if everyone's schedules align. But acknowledging it will at least allow people to have a say in what happens next. So we know that meetings happen, that they need to continue, but we do want to make sure that we acknowledge it and give people a say in the fact that we go on. If you are valuable in your role, if you are giving value in your meeting, which if you've delegated and you've taken things off of your agenda that are better served elsewhere, then you shouldn't have a problem getting buy-in if you need to move beyond the allocated time. So I hope everybody gets some value out of this. If there's something we can help with, obviously we're always here. You will find us on all of our social media. So I'm going to give them to you here today so that it's a little bit easier to find if you're not already following us. On Instagram, you're going to find us at OxygenEq. On Facebook, you're going to find us at Breathe Oxygen In. And on LinkedIn, you're going to find us at OxygenEq. So feel free to reach out to us, send us a message, email. You're going to find on all of those sites, and you can send us an email as well. And one of my coaches will get back to you as soon as possible. I hope everyone is staying healthy and well, and I hope you take just a little bit of time to breathe life in. Have a great day, everybody.